Hey, good morning, Westplex. Steve Casper and David Gall in the studio once again for What About Nutrition? And those of you who joined us from our Facebook posting, thanks for being with us. And you can always go to www.o'fallonnutrition.com. And we've got some shows archived on there as well, so it's pretty exciting. So welcome to What About Nutrition? It's the show on Westplex Radio here that explores the link between nutrition and optimum health and does ask the overlooked question, quite frankly, what about nutrition? Because every day there's more scientific evidence and research regarding the critical importance of nutrition for the human body for the promotion of optimum health. On What About Nutrition today, we'll focus on dietary supplements, herbs, vitamins, and homeopathic remedies, what they are, what they do, and how to use them. You know where to get them. O'Fallon Nutrition. We'll also discuss diet, exercise, and other aspects of living a healthy lifestyle in the 21st century. Your host is David Gall, owner of O'Fallon Nutrition and a graduate of Washington University and Huntington College of Health Sciences Comprehensive Nutrition Program. And I'm Steve Casper of Westplex Radio. Remember, I'm a sidekick. Remember, always consult your health care practitioner before beginning any new supplements or other changes to your lifestyle. The purpose of this show is to inform, educate, and entertain, not to diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. But, there is so much valuable information that we picked up since we started this show in May. And so excited to have you back, David. How you doing?
Steve, I am just having another great day here, and I'm, as usual, excited to get in and discuss, what about nutrition with all these topics that we have to cover. So,
I crave a Reese's what do you say? Reese's what is it? A peanut butter buttercup. There you go. That's what
right.
I can't say it, maybe because I need some gluten, but I can absolutely crave it, and maybe that's why I need it.
Well, maybe that is why you need it, or maybe that craving reflects that your body is desiring it, and that's a great lead into our topic today, Steve, because we're going to talk about why do people crave fats. We've focused in on a lot on carbohydrates over the last few weeks, but people do crave fat as well, and we're going to talk about it today and how that relates to ancestry and mood, all those fun things. Of course, we finished up our diet cure training at O'Fallon Nutrition with our staff this week, and the final number 8 of the 8 imbalances that Julia Ross discusses in that book is the essential fatty acid deficiency. And so she gets into a lot of interesting facts about how heredity and where your ancestors might have come from might encourage or influence your body's requirement for omega-3 fatty acids. And of course, we're all aware, or many of us are, that there's been just tons and tons of studies on mood or attention deficit disorder, things like that in regards to omega-3, as well as, of course, studies on heart disease and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But today we're going to focus in on, some of this ancestry and cravings and mood. It's going to have a little of a weight loss angle as well as a good mood angle to it. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people crave fat.
I always thought it was craving sugar. I never honestly heard about craving fat. I never did.
Well, think about it. Usually they're craved in conjunction with each other.
Okay.
So, for example, if you tend to crave hard candy as opposed to a Reese's peanut butter cup, maybe you don't crave that much fat. And you might already be somebody that supplements with omega-3 oil, and that typically is going to have a big impact on whether or not you are craving fat. So, folks that crave, cheese, fried foods. If they think of bread, and the only reason bread sounds good is because they can have a lot of garlic butter on it, for example, that would be an indicator that you're craving fats in addition to carbohydrates.
Okay.
Of course, like, melted cheese, cream soups. And so the first thing to ask yourself if you're starting to crave some of these richer foods, how many folks do you know that might crave potato chips, for example? And potato chips are a perfect example of fat combined with carbohydrate. So there's a lot of folks that crave carbohydrates in conjunction with fat, and the real issue there is that carbohydrates trigger an insulin response, which we've talked about, and insulin's job is to pull excess sugar out of the bloodstream, and it delivers it to either muscle cells or the liver, and if we don't have a requirement for more sugar in order to feed the muscle cells that might have already burned it, then that sugar is converted into fat.
Yeah.
Well, as you can imagine, if you consume fat along with your carbohydrates and have a blood sugar spike and that insulin that comes out with it, well, that fat the body doesn't have to do anything to it in order to store it. So that insulin stores that fat right along with the sugars that have to be converted into fat before they're stored. So the most fattening combinations of foods are large amounts of carbohydrates combined with large amounts of fat. So that would be things like, cake and ice cream, for example, would be a perfect example of a bunch of carbohydrate with a bunch of fat, and definitely a situation where the body's going to have no choice but to store a lot of it. So, the question for these folks is, why are they craving fat? They're running around, craving chips, or got to have that thing with melted cheese on it, buttered popcorn. And
buttered popcorn is my thing. I mean, I love popcorn. I love buttered popcorn in a theater. To me, Great Escape Theaters at Winghaven, will give them a plug. Their advertisers, good stuff. It's the best popcorn in the universe. Sometimes I'll even wait around till I can hear them freshly pop it. Then I get over there and get in line, and then it's nice and hot. But that you mentioned these other things. I don't think I have cravings, but I do have that buttered popcorn thing.
Right.
So maybe I'm a case for this.
Well, maybe just a touch. But Steve, we've talked, and you've been taking fish oil for something like 20 years.
I really have. I mean, I've taken a lot of omega-3. Right now, I'm on the best that you set me up with the higher levels of the EDA.
Yep, EPA and DHA.
DHA and EPA, right.
Yes. So those are the specific fish oil components of omega-3. And so typically if folks are not deficient in EPA and DHA, that tends to help a lot with cravings. And Steve, you and I were just talking before the show, and a lot of human beings, a lot of human populations typically would live near bodies of water. So we've talked about last week our anthropological background, and one of the things that we learned about in anthropology was that bodies of water have a lot of resources in them. There's fish, there's all sorts of other things that you can utilize as well in bodies of water, whether it's a lake or a stream or a river or the ocean. And so human populations used to set themselves up typically near a body of water.
Wow.
And of course, a lot of us would eat fish. And so we have people of like Irish descent, Scandinavian descent, countries like Norway and Sweden, etc., and all sorts of other parts of the world. Japanese ancestry, Pacific Islanders, many, many other folks who would have been near bodies of water. Their ancestors would have been.
Sure.
And some of these populations would live there for 20,000 years or more.
Right.
And so it's thought now in science that a lot of human beings have started to lose their ability to convert regular omega-3 fats that we would find in things like green vegetables or flaxseed oil. It's thought that a lot of human beings, because they lived near bodies of water with fish in them, that they may have lost some of the ability to convert basic omega-3s into the super omega-3s found in fish, which are EPA and DHA. So if you don't consume fish with preformed EPA and DHA, or algae with EPA and DHA, which of course how many people go around eating buckets of algae, if you don't get those into your system and you can't convert it, then you will be deficient. And many studies have shown that up to 20% of the American population has undetectable levels of EPA and DHA in their blood, or very, very low levels of omega-3 in general. So this is really important. So if you think to yourself, my ancestors might have lived near a body of water, that's a pretty good sign that you might require fish fat or EPA and DHA. And today, of course, those are very, very low in our diet. Regarding your earlier point, Steve, about craving the popcorn, but typically when we've talked, you have not given a big indication of craving a lot of other creamy things. You and I haven't had conversations about cheese or cream soup. So I think the popcorn thing, which I share with you, is probably as much a craving for the carbs in the popcorn as anything, and the fat just makes them taste better.
I think it's also your association with sitting down to a good movie.
Sure.
All the little bells and whistles that go off when the smell, when you go down to watch the environment, anticipation of watching a movie with somebody.
I agree.
And all that kind of thing too. But this is fascinating to me. But the thing that's really, really striking me in this conversation is that I always thought cravings were mostly odd tastes or associated with women that were pregnant, or pickles or things with or sweets.
Sure.
But now I'm learning fats.
Oh, sure. And if you talk to folks, there's a certain type of person out there who really does crave these cheesy or creamy or fried chip-like things. French fries would fall into this category as well. And if you name starchy things, the starchy things may not sound as good if you don't say they have fat. Yeah. Like a baked potato that's plain, they may not care about. But if you describe that baked potato as having butter and sour cream and good cheese sauce on it, all of a sudden it sounds good.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is Julia Ross describes a situation where, in theory, you could supplement these folks with essential fatty acids, with omega-3s, and specifically some of the ones from fish oil as well, EPA and DHA. And generally, they will start to lose their cravings for fat. Right. They tend to come way down. And, how much fat is appropriate? There's a lot of different schools of thought in that. One thing we know is that some of these earlier low-fat diets were too low in fat. I'm referring to things like Pritikin or Dr. Dean Ornish's diet, Dr. McDougall's diet, and there's many others. In fact, a woman who used to be one of the nutritionists for Pritikin, and Pritikin was a diet that used only 10% of the calories from fat, very low protein, very high carbohydrate.
Right.
And people would initially lose weight on Pritikin, but after 2 or 3 months, Ann Louise Gittleman, the original one of the basically dietitians that worked with them, she describes a situation where people would start to develop all these symptoms, poor thinking abilities, skin problems, mood issues, and then they would also actually start to regain weight. And now we know that they were probably regaining weight due to the insulin spikes and the carbohydrate spikes that they were getting because they weren't combining their carbs with protein or fat, ironically.
Which we've talked about on the show.
Yeah, of course. So Ann Louise Gittleman ended up writing books in the future with titles like The Fat Flush Plan or Beyond Pritikin, where she really emphasized the need to add additional essential fatty acids. And when we come back here in part 2, we'll talk about how to achieve some of this balance in the diet, which fats that we're over-consuming we need to eat less of, and which fats we want to eat more of. And then we'll wrap it up with a little discussion of the supplements one can use to provide these essential fats, as well as things that can help their body utilize fat, like the herb milk thistle, which is good for the gallbladder, or the enzyme lipase that helps you break down fat.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Folks, you're listening to What About Nutrition with Mr. Nutrition David Gall from O'Fallon Nutrition and Steve Casper alongside. And we'll be back with part 2 of Cravings and omega-3s and all kinds of good stuff right after this.